I'm going to wait watch Alder. Great.
Colleagues, it's me again. This time around you won't hear. I won't be long because the Dean is here. And I think it behooves me again to really say that we are now at the main portion of the evening, which is why we're here to actually celebrate our celebrants. And before I do that, I'd just like to welcome the Dean, Professor Valodia, who has joined us. Obviously, he was late, and we know that he was late because of a very, very important engagement and that he had to attend to. And just before the Dean Valodia speaks, I'd like again to ask our distinguished Dean, Professor Keller, to say a few words. But just before he does that, again, I'd like to, Imran, in your absence, just reiterate the fact that this partnership dates us by eons, light years. Let's speak terms, that's our language. But it is indeed, I feel like I've been here for ages. It does predate us, and I think it's I've had a very early engagement, and an engagement at lunchtime today with both Professor Louis and John regarding the way forward, for parties. And I think it's clear that the road ahead is replete with many opportunities and a much wider expansion of this collaboration in ways unimaginable, with new dimensions that you all spoke about. So that's what I mentioned earlier, and I think don't be surprised in the future at our executive meeting when we start deliberating in a much more protracted way about this collaboration. So it's more than a collaboration, it's a partnership.
Thank you.
And so I'd like to once again invite the Dean to say a few.
Can I start by saying that I've done two kind of awful things tonight. I firstly arrived late and sort of kept you from your supper, I'm sure. And now I'm doing something. There's one thing worse than keeping someone from their supper, and it's keeping someone from their sweets. So I feel bad about the fact that I've been sort of guilty on both counts. But I'm late because there was a memorial service at the law school for Felicia Kentridge, who played an extremely instrumental role in the formation of our law school and also of our law clinic, and it was just the right thing to do to be there. So I'm quite sure you'll all understand. So I don't think I've kind of ever been in a school before where I'm sort of talking to among members of the audience, or of the people who were here at the founding of the school. To meet Nick, Patrick was here, Thomas was here, and Lou was here as well at the time that the school started. And I think it's a sort of particularly good time for us to be having this event, because it's a time when the school's charting a new path, and you were part of kind of starting us on this road, and I think we kind of looking to you to help us through the sort of phase of the school's growth. So we, from my side, we really value all of the work that you did to start the school and to sort of get us to this point as we now step onto the next phase. And I think it's kind of particularly a good time for us to be honouring two of the best graduates that you've had, that have sort of come here, that have been part of the school, that have helped it grow, and have been sort of part of the sort of public service revolution in South Africa. So to both the sort of Thomas's, congratulations on this fantastic award. I think it could not have come from a sort of better institution, and it's one way for us to just sort of concretize the sort of partnership that I sort of don't really know sort of Thomas that sort of Thomas well, and I've kind of only met this sort of Thomas in the last year. Sort of, Thomas, from my side, it's been an absolute pleasure to sort of work with you for the last year. I first really engaged with you when I had to talk to you about sort of coming for an introductory session as the dean, and I have to say I was a bit kind of anxious about sort of talking to someone about kind of organizing a meeting for this new guy who's going to come, and you sort of dealt with it in such a calm and gentle way, and I think that really marks the kind of person that you are, and it's been absolutely fantastic. So I think I'll stop there and pass on to the dean on that side.
Well, a couple of reflections first. You know, we have a very important legal principle in the United States: no double jeopardy. So I apologize that you have to hear me speak twice in one evening. I'll really try to make it relatively quick, except when I'm honoring the Thomases. The second point is hearing these stories for the second time, since I heard them 5 years ago, about the very young Lou Picard here and young Patrick and all these other allegedly young people at the time. I'll take it on your word. We're building the school. I'm reminded of my days teaching American foreign policy, where I used to quote from Dean Atchison's, or Secretary of State Atchison. His memoirs are modestly entitled "Present at the Creation." So, Lou, you can use that title again, maybe, but you'll have to get a copyright clearance when you do really, one of the most enjoyable things I do is to travel around the United States and around the world and host events like this. We've only honored about, I think it's 48 of our 8,000 alumni with distinguished alumnus or alumna awards. And as we were deciding who should be honored this year, we started to discuss South Africa, and I really thought that it was terribly appropriate to honor the two Thomases, since they're known around our offices as simply the two Thomases. That's how Lou always talks about them. That's right. And there's no truth to the rumor that they're related, but they're at least friends. They're friends, and I told them, and I told Florence when I met her, I was deeply suspicious when I realized that they both claimed to have 4 children. And for the longest time, I hadn't met their wives, and all I knew is they claimed to have wives and 4 children. It sounded really impressive, nice family men, but actually to have families up here, it's very impressive. So thank you for being here. It was 2007 when I moved from the University of Washington in Seattle to the University of Pittsburgh, and I arrived in July. Lou, of course, was off somewhere, Lord knows where, probably. Most of my colleagues were here, so I had time to talk to the staff. And at one point, I said to one of the staff, does GSPIA have a distinguished alum award? And this is a true answer. She said, you know, we do. Somewhere there's a plaque. And I said, what do you mean somewhere there's a plaque? She said, well, there's a plaque with just the names of people who won in a particular year. I think it's on the floor of Betty's office. You don't need to know who Betty is. All you need to know is I thought, wow, that's pretty impressive. You know, gosh. So I went to the floor of Betty's office. I found this plaque, and it was the kind of plaque that has a little metal nameplate that they tack on every year when adding up. So it was one plaque with, I don't know, 26 names at the time or something, and it said nothing about the individuals other than their name. So I called in more staff, and I said, you know, this doesn't really give me an appreciation of each of these individuals. And I said, what do you have you can give me? And they dug up a box that had bios and photos and things. And I got this idea. I'm proud to say this was my idea because I think promoting a school like ours, generating a sense of pride, allowing students, current students, current students and recent alums, allowing them to walk through the corridors and realize that people who've gone off in the world and done important things were in their position not that long before. So I issued a decree that we would go back and produce plaques for all the previous recipients, and when possible at various ceremonies we would present them with plaques. And for the new honorees, we would award them with a plaque that they can put in their office to impress colleagues, students, deans, and others. And another copy of the plaque goes on the wall of our office in our corridors. So you are literally immortalized at GSPIA, and you also get to dumbfound or overwhelm or impress your colleagues who don't have a plaque now. Okay, and that was really one of our major goals, to allow you to be put in that position. So the two Thomases, remember, it's not just that they claim to have wives and they had 4 children apiece. You notice it's suspicious too that they're, I said, I guess I should go in chronological order, but they both start with M. And it's not like my home was that early before Mogali. Anyway, I told this Thomas the story that when I was a second-year doctoral student at Harvard, I was in a research seminar in Western Europe, and four of us in the group had applied for a Council of European Studies grant to go do research in Europe. And Peter Gurevich, who was our professor and later was the dean at UC San Diego's policy school, Peter came in one day and he said he got a call from the program officer. And he said, Peter, I have 4 applications with your recommendations. Keeler, Kaler, Kelman, and Krieger. He said, when are you going to send the L's and the M's? So I thought of you guys right away. Sometimes when we have less accomplished alumni, better light, and I have reading glasses with my contacts instead of these glasses, I read the entire text. But you guys were so accomplished that you have a small font, bad light, and the wrong glasses on my part. So I'm not going to attempt to read everything here, but I will say this. Here's the official procedure, Thomas. So I will call Thomas, Catalani Thomas Marhoma first, and say that Thomas came to GSPIA to do his MPIA in 1994, received his PhD in 2000, and really, Lou, you should come up here too.
Oh.
You were somewhat implicated in the outcome.
Yes, guilty by association.
And as the dean referred to, it's very special that these are not just 2 GSPIA alums, but 2 people with very close ties to Wits.
Yeah.
And I hope you recognize that we're underscoring the contribution that Wits has made to us in honoring these individuals tonight. Again, Thomas, I'm not going to attempt to read all this, and besides, your wife would probably fall asleep if she had to hear all this. She knows the story. And virtually everyone in the room knows the contours of your career. I'll just say the Thomases have had 2 very different careers, and in the case of Pandulani Thomas Marhoma, of course, he's had a very distinguished career in government, having already been an ambassador, surely one of the youngest ambassadors. And he told us yesterday he's involved in an effort to form an association of former ambassadors in which he must be the youngest person. So you have no chance of being elected to be the head of that. So good try on that front. I also heard a very moving story that I will tell my wife when I get home, that after his 5 years in Mali, it was quite clear to Thomas that it was a bit too much to ask of his wife for him to serve abroad again in that capacity. I'll look to our women students and say, can we have a round of applause, please, for a man who made this decision? Come on, the women will now lead. Come on, Tien and Eliana, lead the round of applause for the husband.
The former student.
The former student. Now gainfully employed.
Thank you.
Well, we won't say where.
No, we won't mention the university. I heard a little bit about competition with med school there earlier, so I'm not going to mention it.
Other place.
But Thomas, again, has played a very important role in foreign policy, in the foreign ministry, in various positions at home for South African affairs and others, as an ambassador in Mali, and recently as an important player in the Defense Review. And I will be looking anxiously at the newspapers to see what your next position is. All I know is you can't be foreign minister because you'd have to travel too much. So take a position that involves staying close to home and providing that crucial advice. Congratulations.
Thank you very
We're
much.
very proud. This is the crucial photo we need.
Absolutely.
And come a little. Sure. You have to decide if Thomas is as handsome in person as he is in the photo. This was taken when he was at Old Mutual, by the way.
Big small guy.
Okay.
Yes, so we do it
Gosh.
this way.
A little awkward, isn't it?
No.
Yeah, and you're besides you're blocking yourself.
Oh, okay, this way.
But now he can't see that.
We can. Okay,
Yes.
There we go. There we go.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to give this to your wife for now. And by tradition, this is your only chance to get up and provide your reflections on your glorious days in Pittsburgh, the remarkable tutelage of Lou Picard, and any other theme you want to go into.
Deputy Vice Chancellor, Dean Valodia, Dean Killer, Professor Picard, the first director of the Graduate School of Public and Development Management, Professor Patrick Fitzgerald, the former director of the Wits Business School, Professor Nick Binadell, the founding mother of the Graduate School of Public and Development Management, Professor Anne McLennan, Professors Anthony van Nieuwkerk, Thomas Mukhale, colleagues, I would say all protocol observed. You can see Professor van Nieuwkerk looks tired. we spent the whole day with the minister, literal Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, literally in 2 rooms. So she was juggling between the 2 rooms, and she was launching the 2 associations: the Association of Former Ambassadors, and indeed Dinkila was the youngest in that and they were calling me professor because we were changing this concept document, the founding document of the association, and I had a lot to do with it. And Professor van Nieuwkerk was holding the Wits flag very high. And I'm saying this because in Valodia there were all these academics, civil society. For the first time we now have the South African Council on International Relations, SACIR, that will be advising the minister. So the 2 of them will be advising the minister. And from all the other universities, UCT, Professor Khalid JP, Professor Peter Vale, and a whole lot of them were part of that council to advise the minister. And so we were fighting literally for her, so she was shuttling between the 2 of them. But I was so happy when she was introducing them and she was saying Professor Anthony van Nieuwkerk from Wits University. So the flag was held high even today. So thank you very much. I am very humbled. Indeed, Dinkila, you said I have 4 children. And I know Thomas Mukhale's 4 children. But in my case, Anne is my witness. Salim is my witness. The other child was born at PNDN, literally. the one who wants to go to Pittsburgh. So Florence was here. They saw her, and that was the time I was going to Pittsburgh, shuttling between Pittsburgh and back at Wits University. And so, little wonder that when it was time for him to go to university, he said, I'm going to Wits University. And he is now doing his second year, electrical engineering, and he stays next door at Nokendo. So he's a Wits child. I am very humbled and privileged to receive this honor from Dean Killer and Professor Picard. It has been a long journey, I must say it. But you know, when you embark on a journey and you have people to help you along the way, you cannot achieve things on your own. And I want to recount this. When I first went to Pittsburgh, I just won the Fulbright scholarship, went to Pittsburgh, didn't know anybody when I got there. So I went to the international students' office, and there was a lady called Linda Gentile. And so she's the one who said, go to you in GSPIA. She was looking for a South African who was there. And then she got the name of Thomas Mohale, gave me the number, and I had to call. And you know, I don't know what, but she also gave me the name of Professor Picard. So I called Thomas, and I was staying in the dorm. They put us in the dorm in there. So I called Thomas, and there was a relationship started. And of course, the first thing is I introduced myself as Thomas. And I say, they told me that you are Thomas Mohale. And so the other thing, Dean Killer, that we share in common is that we found that we come from the most beautiful province in the Republic of South Africa, which is the Limpopo province. So we both come from that province. And so then Thomas, you know, I didn't struggle because there was a South African. And so he then, you know, helped me to find accommodation. So he literally was looking. And then the next step was to take me through the program, the syllabus, to help me to choose the courses for the program, to say, you know, the advice that I got. And that's why I'm saying you can't achieve things without anybody assisting you. And then the other thing was the Fulbright scholarship. He was also on a Fulbright scholarship. And then the town that I come from, Makado, Nick, you know, it's called Louis Trichat. And the town that he comes from, it's called Trichatsdal. So both the towns named after the same person. And this whole coincidence.
This is why I was so suspicious.
You know, so the problem, Dean Valodia, was he now had to introduce me to his you know, fellow colleagues in the same class. And at the dinner last night we spoke about Romain from Mali. There's another coincidence, you know, I didn't know at that time that I would end up in Mali. And then there was a lady called Reagan. You know her, Professor Picard. And so because you were teaching them.
That's right.
And so he introduces me to Romain, Reagan, and all these other colleagues. And they said, Thomas, you must be joking. Are you sure his name is Thomas? They said, yes. Are you really sure? He said, yes. So they said, well, Reagan says, so everybody who comes from South Africa is named Thomas.
I doubt that.
You know? So I didn't struggle in that respect. And then, of course, I when I finished the program, I was on the master's program, the MPIA program, Fulbright for that program, and Thomas was on the PhD program. And so I worked very hard, and in the wisdom of Professor Picard and Professor Stanland and Richard Netley, they said, no, you can't live with just an MPIA. We want you to start to continue with the PhD. And so, unbeknownst to me, they organized the tuition waivers for me to study in Pittsburgh, to pay for the tuition. But I had to come with the other money, and I didn't have a cent. And Professor Picard, fortunately, this is another coincidence, because when I was in Pittsburgh, they were starting the school here. Professor Picard was already working with Patrick, Mark Swilling, Anne McLennan, and Salim, the whole team, after the Mount Flair scenarios. And so they were plotting this school. And so when Bobby Mutaun said he didn't have to send a CV for his job, and I reflected and I said I didn't even have to send a CV for my job at PNTM because of the colleagues that were here and the partnership that was being formed at the time. But most importantly, for the money for me to continue the PhD, Professor Picard had a very good relationship with the Ford Foundation, and he spoke to John Gerhardt, who was head of the foundation, and his wife Gay, and I was told that now you have money. You've got the tuition waivers in Pittsburgh, and then we now have the Ford Foundation to take care of your residential and other, needs when you are at the University of Pittsburgh. And at the time, I had already brought my wife here, because I said, that migrant labor system had ended. I needed her. She was teaching now in Venda, and I brought her here to come and study. And she was willing to become a student again after having completed her degree, the BA in UED from the University of Venda. So she agreed to come, became a student. And they are the people who taught her. Patrick and Salim were there to teach her as well. So and then Wits University was very kind to DVC, because I was able to. They allowed me to go to Pittsburgh to continue with the PhD, and they were paying my salary. And my wife was here, and she was pregnant with our third child, and Wits was taking care of her. So she was still drawing my salary, because PNDM was committed to the development of its own staff. And so I was able to go to Pittsburgh and teach, do a semester there, come back and teach, go back for a semester until I completed my PhD. So the partnership, as you were saying, DVC, it starts a long way. It comes a very long way. This is how far they've been willing to come in the form of supporting this relationship. And so without taking much time, I wanted to say that the one important thing is that every time, even when I had left Pittsburgh, well, not Pittsburgh, but Wits, every time you come back here, they welcome you with open arms, and all of them. So that's why I'm saying every time when you come back here, the colleagues, the new ones and the old ones, it's all with open arms. And I think it's because of this. But I need also to say that part of the stay in Pittsburgh, there was a time when Professor Picard and Pauline said to me, you don't have to stay in an apartment. We have a condo that you can stay in. So I stayed in the condo. Florence came with the kids. We were there staying in the condo just because of the help and the extent to which that they had. And then I realized that it's not just economic development, but it's the building of relationships here for them to be committed to accommodate us. And then, of course, there was a time when I was now back to defend my PhD, finishing the write-up and defending the PhD. I was now staying with them in Squirrel Hill. So in that house in Squirrel Hill, we were staying there. And so, and so finally, when Lena came to visit in Pittsburgh as well, it was so nice, and clicking with Florence and the building of the relationship. But the trajectory that has taken us, and Nick, we used to teach together, but he was on the business school, I was on this side. And when we were working on the defense review, he was very helpful. He was the person that we also drew on him on military strategy. And so I'm just saying the tradition that Thomas has started. And everywhere, when I came back, Thomas was already employed by PNDM. And so everywhere, Thomas is always, that's why I was saying when they were asking me who's going to speak first, I said he's my older brother. And everywhere he's been opening the doors. I found him there. I found him here and everywhere. So thank you so much. But I want to say thank you to to all of us in here, but particularly also the fellow Pittsburghers, those of the colleagues, Johnny, Salim, Kennedy. Thomas, I also had to mentor, the way you mentored me, fortunately Kennedy came, and I also mentored him. So the first thing when he came, I said, I am Thomas, the third president of the United States, and you are John F. Kennedy, the 34th president of the United States. So I'm going to guide you because there are 33 presidents at the gap between the two of us. So thanks a lot. Horatio was one of he's now a doctor and part of the staff here, but he was part of the team that came from Mozambique. Part of the team that we trained when he came here, and it's good to see him as part of the staff. So Jean, Johnny, Kennedy, am I forgetting any other Pittsburghers here? And you know, Wotela, the team. Where's Ellen? She's also gone now. So all of us, Bongi, the team. So thank you very much to everybody. I really enjoy. I cherish this relationship. That the way that they took care of us, and they've done the same. I think if any one of them were to give their Pittsburgh experiences, they'll tell you the same thing. It's mine and Thomas, just a snippet of the relationship. So Dean, please tell them when you get back that we really appreciate. And I was happy when I heard the DVC saying that this partnership will continue to grow it. And you can see the role that this young school has been playing. I was just indicating with Professor Anthony, there's a whole lot of things that people who have gone through this school and the other school, because I've had the privilege of teaching them in the last month or so on the other side. The whole city of Johannesburg, Trevor Fowler and his team, committed to be trained here at the business school. And the Minister of Public Works was here, the Speaker of Gauteng, she's studying here, the Premier of the Northern Cape. So it attests to the credibility and the reputation, the international reputation that FEDS has. And it is through partnerships like these ones that we continue to have this. And so you are not lost. You are welcomed in South Africa. They took care of us when we were there, and hence we're taking care of you, Elodia and Tian. Is it Tian? Yes. So thank you very much, colleagues. I really appreciate it.
That's the first speech by an alum that's ever been given where you didn't mention the Pittsburgh Steelers. So it's admirable restraint. I actually prefer baseball. We don't have to talk about it. However, I am required to say that, remember, the Steelers have still won more Super Bowls than any other National Football League team. So, again, it's in my instructions from the provost office. One other point, full disclosure, I realized I should acknowledge that both my son and I have the middle name Thomas. But that didn't play any role in my selection.
My middle name is wrong.
Is that right?
That's it.
Can I ask Thomas number 2 to come?
Thank you.
And I'll say to the big brother what I said before, which is, remember, if we had a larger font, better light, and better glasses, I would read more of this. But you guys are an interesting match set because I can sum up Thomas Mogali's side of the ledger by saying it's very interesting, and it says something about the school that we produced one individual who's gone off and made his contribution directly in government. We produced another who's made his reputation as a teacher, scholar, and then academic administrator, very importantly, and who has had, yes, some direct policy impact, because I read your entire CV in preparing this. But it's interesting, and we do pride ourselves on training people for myriad types of positions. The first time I came here, when I was introduced to Thomas Mogali the first time, I was told that he was the interim director. And I can tell you, I haven't told this before, it was a very happy day when Lou sent me a note saying, Thomas has been selected as the regular director. I thought, yes, that's very impressive, very good. So congratulations with all you've contributed to WITS, all you've contributed by extension to GSPIA, it's a pit and our reputation is much appreciated. And I can say that Alina, too, I know has played the role of the supportive wife, and I'm guessing you've probably been away from home too many times. Deans and even the Vice Chancellor's office, I'm sure, have had really important meetings that you had to go to and missed events with the children and such. So I always try to say we do understand that too. And my wife did require me to say it, but I would have said it anyway. Anyway, so Thomas, let's do our formal presentation, and then I am a little worried because you know she has a written speech. So you never know just how long the written speech will be. I made Blue buy the plaque. That was seriously.
Okay, big smile, guys. Okay. One more. Great.
And now we have to do that handshake that's awkward with the plaque somewhere in here.
Okay. One more. Great.
And I can make minutes
Yeah, that's quite overwhelming, and it's a good thing that I had the younger Thomas start first, because he said most of the things that I would have said. And thank you very much for your good memory and recollection. As you know, I'm not that in terms of remembering names and dates and all of those things. And you did a good job of reminding me really about our previous life in Pittsburgh. Thank you very much, Professor Killer, Professor Pickard, for hosting this event and for honoring us in this particular fashion, us, Pandelani, and myself. I also further like to thank the DVC, Professor Vilakasi, for taking time off, the Dean for sandwiching his meetings as efficiently as he did and still be here with us. It truly is an honor that all of you, Nick, I haven't seen you in a while, and it's a pleasure to see you. And colleagues, thank you, all of you, for gracing this occasion. It really is highly appreciated. It shows the community, the family of the School of Governance that we are. One constant in this family that perhaps we haven't referred to quite regularly is Professor Anne McLennan. When I came here, Anne McLennan was already a fully fledged member of the staff, and she played a critical role in making me feel at home, in helping me understand. Actually, I thought she was previously trained as a teacher, because she had all these ideas about, how you teach and how you construct your course pack and all of those things. And I very quickly settled in as a thanks to her contribution. And she has been with us from that period up to now. So that's a great. I do know that awards such as this, distinguished alumni, are not given quite often. And I feel, and they're given for a particular purpose. And I went back into the GSPIA website and read the actual description of the of this award and what it is meant to do. And I actually found it still challenging. I wasn't sure that as a person I've achieved all of the things that it says and a person who's awarded ought to have accomplished. In a sense, therefore, it presented me with a challenge. First, the challenge is to remind me of the road that I've traveled. By the way, unlike Matoma, I first worked at another university. And when I got the scholarship from Fulbright, the intention was to go abroad
and further my studies and come back to that university and plow back to that university, because it is a university that in the South African jargon is called one of the previously disadvantaged. At the time when I went to the administration to apply and request that I be released to study, I was not given an answer. It was only 2 months after I had left. Patrick says, that was your first and last act of being rebellious. Because I had left the university without actually being given permission to leave. And I just thought people will understand that the stakes are very high. This is the turn of the 1990s. South Africa is becoming a new country. We need all the skills we can get. For heaven's sake, these guys must release me. Well, actually, they didn't think like that. So I was in Pittsburgh, fast asleep. And then I get this phone call from one of the administrators. Thomas, where are you? I say, I'm in Pittsburgh. He said, well, you know that we haven't granted you permission to leave. We give you 1 week to come back, or you must resign. Well, I thought that was a very simple option for me. And I said, well, I'll give you my resignation the following day, which I did. I have to also say that with all of that anxieties, I already had 4 children with my wife, who agreed that I should go forth alone, and she will stay in my ancestral home with my mom and my dad. And that, and towards the departure time, I actually asked her, "Are you sure I should go? Do you really support this?" And she said, "Well, you know, if you don't want to go, don't try and use me as an excuse." And so, you know, I didn't want to disappoint, and so I took that. And so they said, "Resign," and I said, "No, thanks. I'm not going to resign. This is a lifetime opportunity. It may never come again." And yes, I arrived at Pittsburgh. It was a winter's month of January, because I couldn't leave in September. I was still negotiating to get released, but by December it became clear that these guys were not going to release me. And so I left in December, arrived in the real middle of the winter. Yes. I hadn't seen snow like that before, and I had felt as cold as when I arrived, which raised all other questions, whether was this actually the right decision. And thanks to Lou Picard, who I had met before, he hosted me at least for the period that I was still looking for my own accommodation, and I ultimately got a place to stay. And it is also difficult at the time, because you get in mid-term almost, because all the new students started in September, and you are among the first who are coming in, and you're still trying to find where the library is, where the computer lab is, and those kind of things. And but the support system was fantastic. Lou had a network of friends who supported me, who gave me a sense of belonging. And 3 years, 4 years, actually didn't look that long. And then I had to collect my data. I'd finished my coursework, done my comps, came back, and I was given this option: "Where are you going?" And Lou said, "Well, one of the places you might want to think of is going to a new school, which is at Wits. And that's the place where they probably will provide you with some accommodation." And we quickly got in touch. And thanks to PNDM at that time, they gave me a little office down the corridor. And I sat there, did my data collection. At the end of my data collection, as I was graciously thanking them and telling them that I was leaving, the question was popped by Mark Swilling. He says, when you coming back?" I said, "I don't know. I have lost my job at Teflo." So I don't know. They said, "Well, wouldn't you be interested?" in joining us? I said, of course, I would be very interested to join you. And a quick interview session was arranged, and I was interviewed, I do remember, by Mark Orkin, Mark Swilling, Patrick Fitzgerald, I can't remember the other two people. And after that they said, we think you should come and join us. And I left for Pittsburgh, finished the write-up, and came back and joined the School of Governance, or PNDM as it was then called, 1st September 1995. And I basically relocated my family, my children, but my wife remained up in the north. And we have raised our children pretty much like that, 4 boys. And during that period that I have been in PNDM, I never lost contact with Lou Picard. Whenever he came, he always made a point that we meet, we share ideas about what to do. The research area, the material the new material books that were being published that I could use in my class. And occasionally I would invite him to teach some of my classes. Even as other colleagues were going back and forth, Lou always made sure that we maintain some kind of a relationship. And indeed, it was, I think it was in 2011 when I went back for the first time to Pittsburgh. This time to present a paper in a conference, and I really just felt like it was yesterday. So I'm quite humbled by this award that GSPIA has honored, has bestowed on us, Pandelani and myself. It gives me a challenge as an academic to do exactly what my predecessors have done to the students that come under my wing. To mentor them, to support them, to uphold, to give them a sense of standards. I know that sometimes in the school I'm considered to be a bit tough, but it's also part of what I learned while I was in Pittsburgh. Despite the fact that I was in Pittsburgh, ultimately when I did my research, I was supervised by another professor, Professor Beauregard. And I think I learned a lot from Professor Beauregard, especially when it comes to critical thinking, use of evidence in presenting an argument. And to date, that's still the mantra that I use when I assess my students' assignments, my students' research reports. And I think it complements some of the things that my colleagues are doing in casework and in other quantitative type research methodologies. So I'd like to also thank Vet School of Governance for giving me the platform over these years to ply my trade of teaching, of researching, and supervision. This has been a great school for me, and I will forever feel indebted to it. My children have gone through Vets University, and Professor Vilagazi was reminding me about some of the benefits of having your kids going through Vets. And when I look at them now, I really feel that it is thanks, not just because of Lena and myself, but thanks to Vets, that they are where they are and why they do the things that they do. Although, I'd like to almost come to the end by saying, although this might sound a bit trite and hackneyed, it is nevertheless true that whatever achievement I have made or may have attained, I owe in considerable measure to my wife, Lena, here with us today. Everything that I could have done to make, she did everything to make my personal and academic life quite easy, unencumbered. Aside from her loving encouragement in all my academic escapades, she provided me the most important gift, the time and the space to carry out my academic work. Last but not least, many thanks to my academic and professional colleagues for your love, encouragement, and support all these years that I've been here. There is no satisfaction more fulfilling than to enjoy the support and esteem of your professional colleagues. Thank you so much, Professor Killer. Thank you so much, Professor Picard, for this award. When you go back, please convey my sincere, my family's sincere, and I dare say, my Thomas' sincere gratitude for this immortalization.
There's one thing that made our relationship possible that we haven't acknowledged yet, and that's the British Empire. So thank you, British Empire, because I've heard rumors of the important role it played here. And I'm guessing that many of you will not know this story, so I promise to give you the 1-minute version. Pittsburgh is called Pittsburgh because in 1758, General Forbes, with a young Virginia Colonel Attaché George Washington, mounted the second effort to go to the Three Rivers and oust the French from Fort Duquesne. Earlier, General Braddock had tried, and his body is now buried equidistant between Pittsburgh and where they launched their efforts in Virginia. So that didn't work. And in fact, it was called at the time the biggest colonial defeat ever. It was the largest expeditionary force the British had sent, didn't work. But they sent Forbes back, and Washington went for the third time to the Three Rivers. That's why we have a statue of Washington at the airport. There are many places in the States that claim Washington, but listen to this, because this is pretty interesting. It was mainly the military experience that Washington got in his 3 visits to the Three Rivers, and after the first of them, he wrote his first publication, which circulated widely in the colonies. I like to say it was the George Kennan X article of the era. It was explaining the depth of the French threat to the empire. And he tried to mobilize the colonies to support this. It didn't work very well. But the British sent their forces in 1758. They did oust the French from Fort Duquesne with the aid of several thousand Indians who would later feel betrayed, but that's another story. At any rate, so what had been Fort Duquesne became Fort Pitt, named for Pitt the Elder, who was the sort of prime minister at the time, even though they didn't use the title. Really, at the time, I like to say, the Three Rivers area where we are was sort of the Berlin of the era. It was the biggest flashpoint of crisis between the French and British empires. And again, if the French had won, I'd probably be somewhere else tonight instead of it. So I appreciate the French empires. The British empires won. So thank you very much. Yeah. I just want to say one last thing. I want Lou to have a chance to speak. Perhaps someone else wants to. But I'm guessing some people will agree with me on this. In my 2 trips to South Africa, certainly the most entertaining and provocative individual I've gotten to listen to over several meals is Patrick. And Patrick, I'm guessing you would have some reflections for us.
Thank you. Unaccustomed as I am to public speaking. Actually, the best impromptu speeches are well prepared. And, I now understand that I was given a hint about this, but I was too dense to actually pick it up and prepare what I should say. I don't think, despite the sort of media that I should be provocative. I'm not in a particularly provocative mood. In fact, I'm in quite a reflective mood because, I've never been much for the Wenwes. When I was young, there were all these right-wing white Rhodesians in South Africa, which is about to become Zimbabwe, and they used to go on about when we were in Rhodesia, which was very irritating. There's also another band of brothers and sisters who I'm even more familiar with who'd go on about when we were in the struggle. So I've tended to eschew, the sentiment about the glories of the past. And I've tended to sort of militantly focus on the future, the tasks ahead, the challenges that the school still faces in regard to building capacity, good governance, efficiency, effectiveness, a representative bureaucracy capable of delivering the goods to actually raise the lives of the people, the social and economic standards. And within that broader narrative, there are all these other stories weaving through the tapestry of people who somehow, when you look back, and I have to admit that maybe now I have to look back a bit, the future is as murky as ever, and the road is as long as ever, and whatever shoulder-to-shoulder solidarity we have manifested in trying to make a difference. And I believe strongly that we have made a difference. Thomas Matome has made a difference. Thomas Machale has made a difference. All the other colleagues. I'm not ambassadorial, so I don't have the mind of being able to mention absolutely everybody in the right context. So I'm scared if I go too much further, I may diplomatically fall short. But I think that it actually brought a tear to my eye, and well, Thomas, he said it's his reputation of a hard man. I also have a reputation as being a hard man. But I found the proceedings, much more moving than I expected to. I thought these guys from Pittsburgh, as part of their marketing and their media and their public relations, were going to come and hand out some awards, and we were all going to have a jolly dinner. And we have, but I think what has manifested is being so much more than that. And I think it certainly reminded me of, what it was all about, what the organizing mission was, why people came together and what we tried to do, and what people ended up accomplishing. If I look now, and something that didn't come up, the library at Timbuktu.
Yes, exactly.
The whole that somebody like you with these associations should have had to have been the organizing force to actually restore, and illuminate and digitalize. Thank goodness that happened after the place got invaded. And in terms of my other colleague, my colleague for quite a long time, your book about to be launched, which I've been going through, and which you've written together with Lou, jointly authored, which really does, I believe, make a contribution to go just beneath the headlines of all the problems with local government and local governance in South Africa. And in true style, it really gets down to the British Empire, the Boer republics, traditional African forms of governance. And it really does make sense of why we are having these governance problems at the local level. And I mean, it's great that a book of that significance is coming out of this milieu, and that people have begun to reflect and write these things. Because there was a time, and we have been criticized in the university for it, where we were overwhelmed by the task that some people say I was deployed by the ANC to organize, and other people say we self-appointed ourselves with our mission to form a new culture, a new civil service. And when we undertook that mission, from the moment we opened our doors, we were deluged. And expected to perform miracles, some of which we managed to perform and some of which we came short of. But definitely it brought it all back. And certainly it's amazing to sit in this room, which some people remember, Jean, as some maps on a table in your garden cottage, which you thought was Patrick's Walter Mitty illusion that this would actually happen. And some of the people who made it happen. Nick Binnedals, I described Nick as one of the founding fathers. They said, well, isn't he in business? Yeah, those business guys, they make profit and, run companies, and they're sort of ruthless and have no ethics, but we tax them. So we take those tax and we try to do good things, and we also waste a lot of it, and some of it is corruptly used and so on. And those are some of the challenges that we're still facing. But when I came back and I was walking around with a luggable Apple laptop and a little document on how there should be this new school to deal with the post-apartheid public service, and I ran into Nick, who somehow made it happen. I didn't think when I came back that I would be given a year's contract as a research fellow at a business school, and being told, well, you've got a year to prove, is this thing viable? And I tell you, I knew nothing about the politics of it, and Nick protected me from that. I don't know what he did, but he just focused me on this mission, and it happened. And Nick, it's wonderful that you're here. And without you, the school would never have happened. Then I remember the three wise men. I always called them the three wise men or the three gurus. That was Barry Munslow from the University of Liverpool, which is my other alma mater, aside from Wits.
And mine.
Yeah, and yes, we both politics graduates, and not teachers after all. Vasant Muhrarea from the Indian Public Service, but via the ISS at Den Haag, and Lou Picard. And these three great scholars, great teachers, gurus of our genre, of our discipline. There was always one or other of them, it seemed to me, during those tough years, those early years when we were trying to start the school. And I have images of them that are just amazing. I remember Vasant Muharya finding me, when we were still across the other building, collapsed on my desk saying, I've got to go in and teach. We used to teach during the day, the one class. We used to teach again from 5:30 to 9. And I said, I'm just too exhausted. And Vasant said, well, what were you going to teach? And I said, I was going to teach this. He said, fine, I'll do it. And he we still used transparencies in those days. He said, what were you going to teach? He started to write on the transparencies, a terrible handwriting. Went in and taught for the first hour, after which I was recovered enough to come and assist him. Barry Munslow, very much the same. Lou Picard, in that same building, came to assist us and eventually mobilized funding for the exchange and for what Anne was reminiscing about, where we would get course packs through DHL, done by a team at Pittsburgh.
With no copyright approval.
No. It was still revolutionary days. No bourgeois intellectual. We desperately tried to read them before we actually had to teach them to the class. Those classes, very distinguished people. Those early classes were released political prisoners, people from the UDF, the trade unions, the Master Democratic Strike, and returned exiles. A lot of them went on to do all kinds of stuff. And we were, trying to deprogram them after some of us had been training them in Marxist Leninism and broad fronts. And now we had to actually say, well, that was fine, but now we we're sort of about to win. We're going to have a constitution very shortly. We actually have to run a government. What is to be done is a great document, but this is not a matter of how many steps forward and how many steps backwards. We're going to have to take thousands of steps forward. And I remember Lou sitting in our makeshift computer lab, and it's hard to imagine this, but most of our students who had arrived were not computer literate. I mean, that's not that long ago. This would have been 93, perhaps 92.
Just before you moved.
And there's the eminent Professor Picard, sitting there with the students, patiently saying, this is how you push this button, the computer turns on, wait for it to boot up. Yes, move the mouse, don't worry, you can't break anything, move it. Double click.
Double click, yeah.
I mean, this was really the kind of shoulder-to-shoulder solidarity we had, and the spirit of this. And we had, of course, the people who came and became cadres of the school, like my colleague Thomas Mukhali, who has really served and served and served. And we had the sort of high flyers, like the Thomas Matomas, who flew in and participated and then went on to greater things. But he's right, he's never really left. And he's teaching for us now. Weren't you training the politicians the other day? Yeah. And that's a difficult bunch.
Including the MNC of
Yeah, who better to do it than you? Except for Salim, of course.
Exactly.
He makes it very clear to them from the word go. He won't take any nonsense. Kennedy, I don't know, he seems to charm them. He has another approach, but yes, that's fantastic because the school's now been given the job after all these years to train the legislature how to exercise oversight over the executive. So I guess we're still going, and look, we're still here, and Lou,
Still here.
you're still with us. And with a bit of luck, we might even remember to renew your visiting professorship again. I think from time to time it lapses, and we actually think you're fully employed here. But the trouble with the university is, although it's an African institution, we don't have the post of permanent visiting professor for life. Look, I think I've spoken enough, having been thrust into this. My congratulations to the people who've been honoured. I think despite your modesty, I think it's richly deserved. Thomas, I think you haven't stopped flying. And I think that, although I have no more locus standi, I'm in that terrible and wonderful position of not having to speak on behalf of anything really, except, who was it, Jean-Paul Sartre, who said, my own fleas. I'm not representing government, I'm not representing the ANC, I'm not representing WITS, the school, the faculty, but just from my own heart, I think that this relationship with GSPIA and Pittsburgh, it was there at the beginning. It's been there in the middle. It's still there, and I know sometimes we got funding for it. When we didn't have funding, we kept up the relationship. It's been an organizational relationship, it's been an intellectual relationship, it's been a collegial relationship, and if I can take Lou Picard back to his Halison days as an SDS activist in the 60s, it's been a comradely relationship. And I mean, we have been activist scholars, and we've tried to change the world, which means we were true to our radical roots. To some extent we have, not nearly as much as we would have wanted to, but we're still trying. We're not done. We're still on the road, as the Dean says. The school will reinvent itself yet again, and it will go forward in the new context with the new tasks. And we will, I think, be very spiritually renewed in terms of occasions like tonight, which has been sponsored by, but I don't mean in terms of the money. I know you paid for it, but sponsored and promoted by yourselves in the spirit of what has been really a wonderful relationship, as evidenced by the words of my two colleagues and the experiences of so many of the other people in this room who have benefited from that relationship. And it's been a two-way relationship, like these relationships so often are not, sadly. We once had a relationship with the Harvard Kennedy School. It was very clear who was telling who what how to do things. But really, thank you for giving me this little platform. I've probably abused it too much already. I think we should move on and hear from somebody wiser than myself. Thank you.
Yeah, just a quick note. You reminded me, Patrick, that as an undergraduate, all the way through my senior year, I thought I wanted to focus principally on political philosophy, and I was cured of that by attempting to read Sartre's 580-page Nausea, Le Nausée, en français, right? I decided more empirically focused political science was a far, far better way to go. So I'm happy I did that, and it led me to be here today. Lou, it's about time to bring you up.
You had made a mistake. That's actually a novel. Perhaps you should have read Search for a Method instead.
I did try. I'm going to bring Lou up. I don't mean to exclude anyone else who wants to say something like Anne and others, but I think it's about time that Lou gets a chance to reflect.
Well, I'll be very, very brief. Rather than a formal speech, I'll just do what I shouldn't do, and I'll do a when we. And go back to 1981. I met this guy who had jet black hair, looked a little bit like Lenin. And he was a journalist, he said. Oh, I said, wow, that's an interesting thing to be doing. And then I found out he might have been doing a few other things. So that was my first image coming into a new South Africa. My second image, by the way, was in Swaziland with Peter Kaposa. And we worked together for several years. He was an official with USAID. We were both younger, and well, Peter was thinner. I was probably about the same size. And we were talking about human resource development in SADC. I guess we still are, and I think human resource development is still a major issue, not only in this part of the world, but all over. So, but my other images have already been referred to. One is sitting down in Nick Benedill's School of Business with a small little office in the basement. I do think you had a little window, but it was about the size of a, yeah. But there were two of Enos, and Kashani was there, and you, and then there was this young graduate student working on her PhD, and she had all of the flip charts. Must have been 17 of them around this small office. And I talked to Patrick, what are you doing in a business school? You know, you don't even believe in business, right?
What the hell did I say?
Nick doesn't believe in business either, but he does practice what he doesn't believe in. And Nick, you are the unspoken hero of the story in terms of this school, the business school. Oh, and there's that other place, somewhere north of here. And so my congratulations to you on that. Yeah. So, and then I met some others. I met Jean de la Harpe. Jean was trying to work on a master's degree. And, you know, I said, Jean, why don't you come over to Pittsburgh for a year? And bring Salim Latib with you. Well, it wasn't quite that way. Salim had a Momberg Fellowship. Jean had a Heinz Fellowship. Jean finished her master's degree in record time a wonderful degree. It should have been a PhD, by the way, but I told you that at the time, and it's still true. Working on issues of environment long before environment was known. Salim continued to develop philosophy. Philosophy of public administration, philosophy of education, and in general, just philosophy of life. And so, but Salim was my first student at the first 1991 or 2, whenever the first, he was a young man by then, still is, by the way. He was the very top student in this class. So that's an image. And I will say that. And then I do remember a whole group of people beginning to come over after Gene and Salim. Kennedy coming over. We had a whole series of people coming over on the so-called TELP program, Tertiary Education's Linkages program, which was, by the way, targeted at disadvantaged universities. Now, unfortunately or fortunately, several of them, such as Johnny, are now here. I don't know how that happened, but we'll not go too far there. Johnny finished his PhD sitting at in Pasvar Hall. And so I thank you for coming. I'm glad you're here. I still have a very soft spot for what used to be called the University of the North, because I discovered there was a guy up there who I'd met before. He was the emergency rector. I don't know what you call him when they send in the fire alarm system afterwards to try to rescue it. And so we worked together, Patrick and I and a couple of my colleagues from Pitt, trying to figure out what to do with the University of the North. And that was a great project. That was a wonderful project. Thinking about restructuring a school which had very difficult birthing, middle, transition pains. And continuing to come here, and of course our two honorees coming to Pittsburgh. My thanks, by the way, especially to someone who's no longer with us, who contributed so much to this situation where we're in today in terms of the transition, John Gerhardt, who started in New York in the mid-'80s or before, came all the way through the transition, unfortunately died too young as the rector of the American University in Cairo. But he was a major player. And Dick Fainall, my old colleague from NASPA, who was the education officer at Ford Foundation. So both of them I knew well. John and I worked in Botswana back in the, he was in the Ministry of Agriculture in the early 80s. So the images go on, and I'll just mention one or two more. The images of colleagues who are here now, and in particular, some of the younger people who have been coming over. And I would like to introduce Eliada, who's here. Eliada is our PhD student from the University of Pittsburgh Graduate School of Public and International Affairs from 2010. I will say it now. She is a senior lecturer at the business school, the University of Canada. And I congratulate her. She's doing a wonderful thing. And I would also like to say that we're still working. Tien Tien arrived 2 days ago after passing my PhD development theory class as a first-year master's student. She's from Beijing, and she is here coming in from Beijing via Pittsburgh. And I pointed out to her as we came in from the airport, you know, and she said, all those buildings are in Chinese. I said, oh yeah. You study that and figure it out for us. She's very interested in China and Africa. So, with that, I know I've listened to people. I look around the room, and I would say also one other thing in terms of my former colleague, David Gould, who we were about to embark on this adventure down here in the late 80s, when David tragically died he was on Pan Am 103. In many ways, I was his successor in terms of our West Africa work, our East Africa work, and we very much wanted to get down here. So we're still thinking about the future, not the past, talking about new adventures, and the wine in the Cape, as I understand, is still pretty good. So we did consume a lot of that in the past, and hopefully we will in the future.
You guys are in control. We're done with our...
Yeah, we're done.
Yeah, we just have a few presents token of thanks. And,